Hello, Houston, and hello, world. This is Vicky Cruz with the Hero Network, and here with me today is my co-host, Victor Escalante.
Vicky, good morning.
Good morning, Victor. How are you?
You ready to do this?
I'm ready to do this again. So, viewers, we are the Hero Network, and we are here to bring education, resources, and hope to you. And today's guest, we're very pleased and thankful to have you here, Julie.
Thank you.
With our Houston Police Department, Julie Pleasant.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And I mean, I
Yes.
read your profile, your bio, totally impressed.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, I want to be able to read just your background. And while I'm doing that and getting ready, I met Julie not too long ago over at the, violence, the military violence sexual event that, the sexual harassment prevention
Yes.
last month when we celebrated Vanessa Guillen. And you were
Okay.
there providing resources and the wealth of information. And a little bit about her with Julie that I want to share with you. She's fourth generation. But she right now is serving and piloted the program that's called the Houston Domestic Abuse Response Team. So we're going to talk about what she's doing. As we all know that this month is Domestic Violence Prevention and Awareness Month. And so, which is hence why we have someone like Julie here. And we're just going to take it away with questions. And I'm going to let my co-host, because he's already just
Ready to go.
ready to go. We're ready to go.
All right. I like it.
So, Julie, again, this is Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. Tell us, what is Houston PD doing in the area to bring this awareness to the community?
This exactly what we're doing. Reaching segments of the community that without your help, we don't have a voice. To be able to educate, to be able to spread awareness, to let people know sometimes what domestic violence looks like. Some unfortunate families grow up in a culture of domestic abuse and they don't know what right looks like. They don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. So to educate people on awareness and resources and ways to get out of abusive situations is what this month is all about. And to give us platforms to do that, we have community partners and segments of our service partners, other government agencies, the DA's office. We all work together to try and educate and spread awareness about this important
Why don't we
topic.
go ahead and get started there, because we can do a really deep dive, but I want to stay surface and then we can drill down. What does domestic violence look like? What are the myths associated with it? Obviously, the bruising, the constant depression, but from your experience,
Those
what
are
do you
easy
typically
indicators,
see? Yes.
right? Those are easy indicators. But, I once had a victim say, I didn't know that I didn't have to be black and blue to be a victim of domestic abuse. So one is financial abuse.
Yes.
You don't have any financial resources. You have to ask permission. Your check goes into an account, or you don't have any funding, because if you do, you might be able to escape what you're in. So you don't have any choice options, from clothing to groceries to where you get to go or who you get to talk to. And the first steps, of course, relationships don't start out like that, right?
Right.
I pick you up on the first date and I smack you around. It doesn't work like that. It's gradual, and it's all about control and power. So it may start with, I don't really like that dress, or I don't like the way your hair looks, or I don't want you to hang out with those friends anymore. And then it starts to get more and more isolating. And that means I have all the power, I have all the control. I'm your only person. You have to listen to me. And that's kind of how it starts.
So more in the mental, emotional. Abuse.
And then it grows into, well, you can't do better than me. Who would want you, look at you, or you have kids, or from the immigrant community, I've got your passport, I've got your IDs. You're not supposed to be here. If you do call the police, I'm going to take the kids and you'll never see them again.
Wow.
Vicky, I'm reminded of the quote from our last guest that said that the chances of drastic action taken by abusers is like 700% if you leave the abuser. And so this creates a no-win situation for victims because, again, they're subject to act on the threats that the abuser is constantly giving the victim. Talk about that. It's like if you are called into a call, or if you in the position that you have, what sort of protocols are followed when a police officer shows up at a home to answer a call on domestic violence?
So typically, the officer is going to come in a two-man team because they are one of our more dangerous calls for service.
Yes.
So you have you and your partner. You'll ask if everything is okay. If it's a 911 hang up, there may be some other type of, if everything is okay, tell me what number I'm holding up. And then if I'm holding up a 2 and they say 5, I'm going to say, I need you to step out of the house.
Okay.
And then we're going to be able to have a private conversation and know that something is not right. So giving them the option in secret to be able to give us a sign. From there, they may have called and they want to outcry and have their story written down. The sense of justice is different for every person.
Yes.
That person may just want to get out of the situation. The next person may want to have that person brought to justice and go to court and the whole 9 yards. The next person may want to do that and then also receive long-term resources like long-term counseling, et cetera. So it just depends on that person's situation. But the next thing we do, if DART responds to that scene, you'll have a social worker, a victim advocate, and an officer who has specialized training to sit with that victim and say, this is a questionnaire. It's about your needs and safety. We're not worried about what you want to do with the suspect or how you want to move forward with that part, but we need to make sure that you are safe. And if you don't want to leave right now, because we know historically it takes 7 to 8 times before that victim will leave. Let me give you resources that can help you get out safely. And for God's sake, if you are leaving, do not say you're leaving, because that's the most dangerous time when that abuser is aware that they are losing control and they will lose that victim, that couple, their partner. Just leave. You don't have to announce it. Just leave. If they don't know, you're doing better, because that sets off all the bells and whistles.
And what are you looking at as far as like demographics, Julie? Like, I mean, when you are getting these calls, are they from homes that are, with families, or what kind of calls are like?
If you're talking about gender, it's historically more female reportees than male. However, we know that males underreport for the same reason women do. It's shame, it's machismo. I can't call on her. Yeah, she hit me and she broke a plate over me and I'm scratched. But typically that's not going to be an outcry. So it's true, it's a very underreported crime on both sides. But typically it's more female victims, and same-sex partners account for that too. It has no demographic, it has no financial, it hits everybody. Now, those with more means have more resources. They can afford more resources. So obviously our outcries are mostly underserved communities, higher proportions for Black, minority, and Hispanic Latino.
Julie, why don't you go ahead and give us those statistics for people to be aware of just how pervasive this problem is?
I mean, we know that for Houston, we have between 23 and 30,000 calls, reports. That's what our investigative division deals with. We know charged in Harris County, and that's all of Harris County. Right now, there's 16,000 cases that they hold that was just put out. We know that of the victims who
Is
outcry.
that year to date or is
That's
that per month?
This year. Oh, no,
Okay.
that's this
Wow.
year. We know that of those domestic violence homicides that we do see, we know 80% of those women have a reported case of stalking prior to their murder. And we know that 30 to 50% of those with a documented case of strangulation in their criminal history are those that murder officers. So those that nothing's going to stand in their way from doing what they are going to do.
And would you say, Julie, like I know that Harris County, they have their own reporting. Does that include the whole Harris County? Because your city of Houston, is it 16,000 across the whole county or just the city?
Across the whole county.
The whole county,
That's,
okay.
that's the district attorney's office, which they are on sheriff's department, HPD, constables, that's everybody.
And again, this is probably underreported because
Oh, very.
a lot of crimes are not reported, especially this type of crime. So I did research for another podcast, and the national statistics are 1 in 4 men will be abused in their lifetime by their intimate partner, and 1 in 3 women. Think about that, Vicky. Every time you're in a room, 1 in 3 women is either going through or will go through some sort of domestic violence in their lifetime.
Wow.
That's
I mean,
real.
of course, then violence starts. I mean, what, at the home?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, most of our, I'm sure, it starts at home. And so you carry on this behavior.
I want to piggyback on what Julie said is a lot of victims don't know that that's abuse because they grew up with it. They just consider it as normal. And so they don't understand boundaries and what's okay, what's not okay. And where do you draw the line between abuse and just, bantering? I want you to comment about the psychological abuse, Julie, that happens in domestic violence. And all of the research that maybe you have access to there's some partners that are psychopaths that they are so good at it that they even fool the system until it catches up with him. Talk about that.
Sure. So, we're not talking about a robbery where you just go up and it's a stranger, you
Right.
do the act and you leave. These are loving couples. They love each other in some component. They share children, they share a history. So when you talk about emotional and mental abuse with and it's brainwashing. You're told over and over again you're worthless. You won't amount to anything. Nobody loves you. Nobody will believe you against me. Like you and me, it's a constant cycle of manipulation. And after so many years, you start to believe that. I had a victim who was told over and over again, she had 2 kids and 1 on the way with him. If you leave me, I'll find you. I will find you. I will hunt you down and I'll bring you back. And if you leave, I'll kill you and then I'll have the cops kill me. So there was no rational.
That's a triple
there was
bind. No way out.
Right.
Yeah.
No way out. So she did leave and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. And he lifted an AR-15 at officers and he was killed. Now he thought he had killed her and her child, but she survived. But she was angry that he was not going to be held accountable for what he did. And, the only thing I had to say to that is I knew she was a God-fearing woman and he will be held accountable somewhere else.
Yeah.
It may
Wow.
not be here.
Vicky, I heard this week how Purina has an initiative to provide care for pets at some of these shelters because that's another factor as to why a lot of victims stay in abusive relationships is because pets are like family. And so when the abuser threatens to kill the pet if they leave, they're basically held hostage. And so Purina has this initiative to provide care in some of these shelters so they can leave and they can take their pets.
Yeah, because a lot of these shelters
Yeah.
don't do that. And speaking of shelters, Judy, tell me about the resources. You're out there, and not just you, your team.
Yes.
And I appreciate that all the different programs that the Houston Police Department, you you guys have. I mean, it's amazing. And so with the resources, you go to call in. Is there any sort of gaps that maybe you don't have that, you know what, that there's something that you can use furthermore in our city, like maybe transportation, or what is it that these victims need that
Sure.
you have kind of
Sure.
trouble connecting
and you
with?
know, I applaud Victor for bringing up the pets, because pets are like family.
Yes, absolutely.
And so one of the first things we did on DART was partner with Houston Pet Set and an emergency hospital that will take the victims' pets, hold them, and then give the pet resort. Houston Pet Set has taken the partnership, and they will cover the charges for the animals until the survivor is out of emergency shelter. And that can be months. That is perfect that you brought that up, because some people who are trying to escape abuse won't go.
Yes.
I can't leave the suspect or the abuser has threatened outright. And she or he believes that. So they're
because
frozen
there's
in fear.
evidence. There's evidence that they're
And they
going
have
to act
before.
on it. Yeah.
They have before. They
So-
have done something
So
to.
that's a total mind manipulation.
Sure.
And so what did they say? So Purina's what? They've actually offering.
They're either providing resources or funding to create some sort of care for pets in these shelters, or partner up with with organizations like Julie is saying, so that the victim is not held hostage by not being able to take their pets. Because imagine going to a shelter, you show up with cat and a dog. What are they going to tell you?
Correct.
Right.
And listeners, if you're viewers, if you're watching this, you have any questions for Julie, our guest, 832-997-2728. Give us a call. We want to hear from you. And if by any chance you're watching this video, know of someone who may need some sort of assistance, resources, needs help. Julie, how do they reach you?
So for us, if you need help and you need immediate help, call 911. If you need to ask for advice, if you want to talk to a crisis counselor, if you want any of that, I would call the Houston Area Women's Center. And that is,
We'll get that number.
We need to post that. They also have a hotline. So if in crisis and you don't want to reach out to law enforcement, you don't have to. There is a national domestic violence hotline. We have hotlines. We have partners. Victor asked about collaborations. You asked about collaborations. Are so important. And we have to have those with our community agencies to have emergency shelter in some place for victims to go. We found that approximately 50% of our SWAT call-outs are domestic violence. So barricaded suspects, hostages, it circles back to us. So we will have DART teams that work with the victim and SWAT to be able to end it peacefully, right? So it's really, really important that they understand it is dangerous. We believe them. We want them to safety plan. We want them to outreach to resources and get out safely. So safety planning is key. And if you are someone who knows someone in that situation, know that safety planning is key and work out some kind of sign, like some kind of symbol, because most of the time your cell phone is not yours in that relationship. It's always going to be taken by the abuser because they think something's going on, and they just need something like, I need sugar, or some kind of code that they know they're in trouble. Does that code mean call the police? Is there another code that means just come over? Is there another code that means I need a phone call?
Right.
Whatever it is, just work it out with friends and family.
And so right now with the DART program, Julie, where are you taking that into? I mean, where are you, where's this awareness being created about the program?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
So we did we do panels with, like you saw me at the VA for our military veterans. I'm do panels with the DA's office, community panels, and just really anywhere we can go and have a platform to educate and bring awareness to resources. I mean, that's really what it's about. So many people just don't know. actual rights and entitlements if you are a victim.
Now, let me ask you this: as far as the victims as well, those that are like, for instance, undocumented right now, there are resources for
There
them.
are.
Okay, great.
And
So
we
there's-
don't care about your immigration
Exactly.
status. It says it when you're a victim of violent crime, we give a blue card. And when you have it, it says right in the middle, we do not care about your immigration status. But what we say in print is overridden by what is constantly communicated by that abuser because they believe.
Since I worked in the legal field, I can tell our viewers that if you don't have proper documents, if you're in the country illegally and you're a victim of domestic violence, and if you go to a shelter, some shelters have immigration legal advice that they can provide you because they work with attorneys that do pro bono work, or they work with agencies such as Catholic Charities that have a team of attorneys there that they can begin to work on a visa for you that is for victims. It's the BAWA visa. So whether you are in a relationship with a citizen or a permanent resident, you or even with another undocumented person, you still qualify to get a BAWA visa, which is a visa for abuse people. So take advantage of this information. You don't have to continue to suffer indefinitely because there's resources.
Right. And I mean, and that's why, we're here, to basically extend and create that awareness, to bring in the
Yes.
bridge, to bring in, and I'm sure we talked about HERO as well, helpful, encouraging, respectful on task.
Love it.
Yep. And I mean, and there's just no way. It takes a village. I mean, Victor and I talk about that all the time. And I mean, in the work that you do, our law enforcement, I mean, we have to work. I mean, Victor and I talk about it. There's just no way between our politicians who are out there to serve and the people believe like, bless their hearts. But it doesn't take, I mean, it's not going to take politicians. It's going to take everyone together between working with you, our first responders, our schools, I mean, our apartment complex, I mean, just anywhere and everywhere. And so I just, applaud you for the work that you do. I mean, all of the work, 4 generations. Let's talk about just Julie. Can we talk about Julie and just
Sure.
kind of
How did you get into this line of work, this specialization?
It was-
because your resume is pretty extensive.
intense? Yeah.
You even did a presentation in Budapest.
I did. Yes,
So
I
talk
did.
about your background.
So it was just it was all there was, right? I had grandfathers and father and uncles, and it was law enforcement. And if we had Thanksgiving, public service is shift work, so there wasn't a time. Day shift came in early or they came in late. Evening shift came in early. It was just it was out there, and it was always talk about what was going on in law enforcement and how they help someone and how they feel. And, it's long and tiring, but it was rewarding. So you just grew up knowing that's what you were going to do. It was going to be law enforcement. So, you carry yourself in that manner, and then you go get it. Actually, my aunt was in an abusive relationship, and I was young, but I had to take pictures, right, of her because this time she was going to prosecute. Well, no, she didn't. She recanted later, but having to continue to pick her up from places because he got mad or kicked her out or did whatever. I was 16, so I could drive, and I'd go get her, pick her up, and just seeing that cycle. I knew then at 16 what she should do, but she couldn't see it for herself. And that is exactly how it is in law enforcement. I know what I need to get the victim to do, but they have to see it. They have to recognize it. And so I really do know that it's going to take them knowing when to get out, and not me knowing what I know. And it's hard for law enforcement because we've seen so many endings that aren't successful. Those are the endings we see. So when we see success stories in victim services, we really try and share those with the officers, because officers see everything with the horrible worst scenario endings, right? And it's hard to go to those scenes over and over again and act like it's the first time, because the first time could be the 8th time and she really is ready. But we have to keep that clean bias and say it's, I'm just gonna go and nobody's gonna listen, because there are victims that listen and they finally do get out. So the training and the intensity, and my team is phenomenal. They're victim advocates and they're so passionate about the job. And it is nice to see a victim advocate and a partner really partners, because law enforcement is the facts, what we can prove. Here's the evidence. And social work is empathy and compassion, and seeing those two worlds meet on a scene and how they work through and educate other officers and families is just amazing. So I love my work, and I love the positive side of it and the happy endings.
What about the court system? It's very encouraging when you say that when an officer first arrives on a domestic violence scene, they, instead of going automatically into a punitive arrest mindset, they do fact gatherings and to try to do an assessment, and especially if you got a team that is properly trained to de-escalate and to maintain some sort of decorum so that things don't get out of control.
Sure.
What about the court system? Is there a greater education and awareness with the judges to really understand the nuance of domestic violence? And I say that because I'm a clinician also.
Yes, and I think you're right. And I think it's happening, right? With the escalation in domestic violence homicides and the awareness of it. I think judges really want evidence-based prosecution. So we're finding that the use of more and more lethality tools, like an assessment that is, it's got an algorithm in the background to say which cases are more higher for lethality or abuse, and those should be looked at more sensitively and arguably given a lot of resources, right? So in Harris County, we do have a domestic violence high-risk team. And on that team, we look at cases that are higher in risk for domestic violence. So that's pre-trial. It's the prosecutors. It's everybody coming together, bond, everybody coming together with law enforcement and saying, hey, I don't know if you guys know, but she's still getting threats from the jail right now. And you wouldn't know that right away unless everybody is communicating to make sure that the sentencing, the parameters on bond, all that stuff is being spoken about in that high risk team. So I think we are getting some footage, and I'm very hopeful that it will continue.
That's awesome. I mean, that there's a team. And so how big is that team? I mean,
so we've got investigators from HPD, Sheriff's Department, other agencies. We've got federal prosecutors. We've got the Harris County prosecutors. So it is a Harris County domestic violence high-risk team. I know Pasadena has a Pasadena high-risk team. So this type of work is being done and it's being emulated. And we have a partner who is a tattoo removal. One of these cases, every time the victim did something wrong, she had to have a new tattoo that was like a brand of this abuser. Yeah. So violence looks so different for every victim, but to her, it was getting herself back. So justice looks different through each and every victim's eyes. So we just have to ask what that is and be respectful of it.
And what would you want the viewers to know? I mean, if can you just tell them what it is you would want them to know if there's somebody right now watching or they have a family member, friend going
Right.
through something, what is it that you want them to know?
I want them to listen, believe, and then find resources that are close enough for that victim, family member, yourself, whomever, to really do a safety plan and escape that situation. And if you don't want to do that and there's hope for the relationship, tell them to get counseling. That could be anger management, that could be de-escalation, get counseling for themselves, whatever that looks like, because there are couples out there that won't leave. It's customary, it's religion, and that's okay. But something's got to change, because violence doesn't tend to de-escalate on itself. Violence is a behavior, and love should not hurt. So you don't have to call law enforcement, but you need to get help somewhere, and we can share those resources.
I want to drill down on what Julie's saying, because I actually just wrote a book on domestic violence. So I had to do extensive research. Listeners, what Julie is saying is you need to have a plan, okay? The plan starts everything in motion for you to get out of that abusive situation. We have a caller on the line.
Hi, caller. Thank you so much for calling. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Cynthia. How are you?
Hi, Cynthia. Thanks for calling.
Yes, I was calling because I had a question. I know that people look at domestic abuse from the outside because of the pain that people are going through. But, when it comes to it can be just as bad, the situation. And I want to encourage women that are going through something like that to look at the signs and look. I was in a verbal escalating, and that's when it became a point that I knew that it was not going to be tolerated anymore. So I wanted to ask you, Julie, when, you said that they go through 7, 8 times, 10 times. It's very true.
Mm-hmm.
You do, because you don't want to break away, because it's your family and you want to keep it together. But at the same time, you know that your life is more valuable than anything. And so I wanted to just tell you, what about these women that are going through emotionally inside and went through that abuse? Is there people that they can talk to as well?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Most of our nonprofits are just that, nonprofits. They are there. Long-term counseling, group counseling, 'cause you're not alone, right? That's the point. You are not alone. As Victor said, the statistics staggering, right? So you are not alone, but to know that you're in a group, a group with a therapist, to educate you on some coping skills, some ways to deter the demon verbalization that's going on, and how to cope, how to stop, and how to curb and redirect that into healthy dialogue to get to whatever the anger or hurt or whatever it is. That's so important. And how to get there and how to do that is through therapy, right? And so, yes, our nonprofits around the city, we have so many. Houston is so blessed to have so many nonprofits that are there to help. But you have to call and you have to outreach.
And there is, Cynthia, there is a 211, the United Way, where you can call in, and they also have a list if there's counseling. You may have gone through the abuse, could be decades ago or what have you. We really encourage that, that there's healing, that counseling's taking place, and because it's sometimes that residue can stay in, and
it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
You just have to know how to deal with it. And I am no therapist, but I believe you can get back to a new normal through counseling and healthy conversation with the therapist.
I can't comment about that because I'm a certified hypnotist, a clinical hypnotist. And what typically happens with victims is, like you said, Julie, they are programmed to where they're not even using their own thinking. It's not their thoughts. It's the abuser's language, and sometimes even the tone of voice that is in their head, that is an inner critic that was constructed to live inside their mind. And so the lies that the victim tells themselves are not even theirs. They're the lies that the abuser programmed into them. And this is where stop thought patterns need to happen to say, that is not healthy. That is not my thought. That is my abuser's comment or thought. So I won't go there. So you just do stop. You just stop, think, so that, again, you don't have, it turns into an inner dialogue. A thought turns into an inner dialogue to where you are a victim of your own circumstances, not only inside the environment, but also as a result of the abuser living in your mind.
So I did real quick, Cynthia, thank you so much for calling in. I want to give you this number, Cynthia, before you hang up, and to all our viewers, listeners. Julie just mentioned the Houston Area Women's Center. The domestic hotline number is 713-528-2121. And there's also another phone for the sexual assault hotline. That's 713-528-RAPE 7273. 713, I'm going to say it again for the sexual assault. 713-528-7273. You can also visit HAWC, HAWC.org. They can also provide 800 numbers. I know that there's also a text message or something now that they have that's been put out as well for the domestic violence. But yeah, calling 211 is where you'll find some counseling, or just reaching out to HAWC, because they too have a slew of resources. The Bridge Over Troubled Waters, viewers, if you want to go back to also listen to our Miss Rivers, who spoke, Olivia, who spoke last week with the Bridge Over Troubled Waters, she provided a slew of information, and along with Julie here.
And they're going out into the community. The Bridge Over Troubled Waters is going out into the community. So in very non-threatening, very covert operations for victims to attend and gradually speak to someone without necessarily alerting their abusers.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's key.
So anything else, Victor?
We got 4 minutes.
We have 4 minutes.
So any final words, Julie, that you absolutely want victims to understand?
So I want them to understand the process, right? So the criminal justice system itself is pretty complicated, but it starts with reaching out to law enforcement. If you do outcry, then just know that law enforcement will come. DART runs between the hours of 7 p.m. and 3 a.m. So DART responds to domestic violence calls during that time, and an advocate will sit down and do a needs and safety assessment. And if there is a strangulation case, or if there is something that has egregious injuries, we will recommend that they go to the ER. But so many victims do not want to take children. They don't want to. You're talking late hours of the night, early morning. So we understand. We do work with DART forensic nurses, and they will come to the scene and do a domestic violence forensic exam. And it basically is an inventory of all the injuries. And that is put into evidence. So if the case does go to prosecution, that evidence can be used and help with an evidence-based prosecution. Next, what happens is if the suspect is arrested, then the district attorney's office has a victim advocate who we do that warm handoff to, and then they will be following up for prosecution. If the suspect is not arrested, then we just have that information and evidence, and we're referring them to different nonprofit partners, like ABDA, like The Bridge, like Family Time, Fresh Spirit, all of our partners, and we continue on that way. So no matter what, I need everyone to know they're not alone. We have a ton of resources in Houston, and we like to make sure that it's not cookie cutter. So if you are of Asian descent, we have nonprofits who are BPSOS. We have for Middle Eastern, ANISA. We have Catholic Charities. We have amazing partners, and our cup overfloweth. So all we need is friends and family and victims to know that we've got you. We're here for you, but we got to know that you need help.
And the children too.
Oh.
Do you follow up with the little ones?
So the little ones really are a product of, the injury, because unless they're injured, it's the mother and it's the victims that we talk to. If there is injury to them, though, typically that's when we see the victim leave, because that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. That's the end all be all. Like, they are the mother bear. Once you can beat them, you can abuse them emotionally, financially, every which way. But once you affect the child, that's one of the
Correct.
that's one of the signals they're going to
Julie,
leave.
we could go on and on, but
Yeah.
unfortunately our time is up. Thank you so much for
Okay.
joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having
Any
me.
final words, Vicky?
No, that's it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I want to say thank you for the job you're doing, bringing knowledge and education and awareness to our community is bar none amazing. So thank you for the work that you do here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, viewers, listeners. Please call
you,
us for
Jose
next
Luis,
week.
in
Yes,
the
Jose
studio.
Luis, Aliento Radio. Thank you so much. And again, until then, we just make it a great week.
Go out and have a great week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.